Hello, welcome back to the SN Studio for another video battle report.
It's not a battle report. We're not doing a battle report today. Like he always messes up. You had one job, DC. We're talking ninth.
What are we doing here?
We're talking ninth.
Oh.
Positives and negatives about ninths.
I got my word.
That's why there's no armies, nothing. We've sat down here. I told you specifically what to say, and boom. You got it wrong. Anyway.
Look, I came here to play. If you want to talk, then we can talk. All right?
Let's talk. I think it's about time we talk about ninth.
It's true, actually. We've played a lot of ninth. I think a lot of ninth. And I feel that we actually don't talk about it often. Like maybe little snippets in the battle reports at the end and stuff, but people kind of skip them, or they don't catch those bits at the time. So if you skip, naughty.
Never skip.
Never skip. But yeah, I think there's two things. We wanted to talk generally about how we feel about 9th edition going so far, maybe what we see going ahead in the future, the positives, but also a little bit of the negatives that we've kind of picked up on. But more importantly, we actually wanted to hear what the SN community, you guys, you don't point, you don't point. It's rude. Okay. What you guys wanted, and how you feel about 9th, and all your experiences so far, because I guess that's the way we try and get a consensus of how the meta's changing, how the game's changing, and now that GW are really kind of jumping into those things and listening, then
they are listening.
They are listening.
They are doing a very good job.
Actually. Yeah, really good job on that.
Yeah. When we've just been doing battle reports after battle report of battle report, so it's good to have a break and have a sit down.
Let's reflect.
Reflect. And we've always wanted to do this more, but we always constantly talk about wanting to do more and then don't do it. So here we are.
We're here.
What are we starting off with then?
Okay, battle report? No. All right. I'll try. Let's start off with the positives.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go over the kind of positives of the core mechanics you feel of the game itself.
Okay. I think starting it off, I think they've done a really, really good job with a lot of the grey areas there was a lot of grey areas, especially how they wrote 8th edition. The rule set was good. I love 8th edition, and it's basically 9th is like an 8.5. But they didn't expand as they should have with the rules in the book. The rules were like what, 3-4 pages.
Yeah.
Whilst this is 8th, this is still 8th for me. It's 9th.
Yes.
But like if you've played 8th, you can go straight into a 9th edition game.
You really can.
But they've actually really detailed out most of the rules, and they've given like pointers of how it works and all that. So I think that's a very good start in the positive side of how it works.
Yes. For me, it's quite a little nuanced thing, but I quite like that the changes they made to things like something as small as a CP reroll. Yeah. Is that before you could pretty much reroll whatever you wanted, and that really changed the dynamic of how a battle would play out. Is that a tank explodes, which would cause huge impact across your, because you made a tactical error, for example. I've done it many a time. I've got an explosive unit amongst castled up, right? And then in 8th, it was like, I'll just reroll that. And that was that. And there was no consequences for that, I guess, tactical error in a way, or weakness in your army. Whereas now you can't do that. You can't reroll that. And also, it adds more dynamic to the certain armies having the ability to get, like, for example, Gaze of Fate with 1,000 Suns, if you, it's actually from the Zeech demons, but you can get it for 1,000 Suns. And that Gaze of Fate allows that reroll of any one dice. And there are a couple of other, I think, rules like that actually, it means now that that's got real utility. Yeah. Whereas before it was just, it's just another kind of CP reroll. So little things like that have kind of like
I've loved the way they've worked out how the reroll works.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially things like the charge one, where you can now roll. You have to roll both dice, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I missed the whole rolling one dice." But it's really good because before you rolled 2 dice, and if you got a 1 or 2, even if you rolled one of the dice, you still couldn't make the charge. But now you can actually actually can make that charge. Yes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it changes like that. I'm a bit worried, however. Like Malik tends to roll 1s on his prayers, and I can't re-roll those anymore. So that does scare me a little bit. But I like
very good. I think it's done good for the game.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because a blanket, you can change whatever dice you want. Yeah. I think it takes away the bit of that flavour of the whole point of I guess the game is the randomness of the dice, and how it dictates the game itself. So if that thing is meant to blow up, the dice gods have willed it that it's meant to blow up.
Exactly.
So but then going on to Marines, as a segue with that, they can just reroll everything. So
I'm really looking forward to the new codex. Because Marines are still very, very powerful. Even with the points going up, there's and a couple of erratas and FAQs with them, they're still very, very good.
Super powerful.
But anyway, we're here for positives. I think another good positive is terrain rules. I think we needed terrain to have a lot of rules.
When terrain first came out, we had the book a little bit before, and it just melted our brains.
This is something I have to mention. The terrain bits in the book for myself and for a lot of people, which I actually have talked to, aren't written very well.
It can be a bit convoluted. Or a bit.
The thing they should have done is a couple of visuals, like a couple of visuals coming down. Model. We used to have that in 6th, 7th. They used to do a lot of like little graphs where you could see that would have helped a lot.
Yes.
But then again, as a positive side, I think it's very good. We hardly had any rules for terrain in 8th. That was a big problem. So we hardly used anything like trees because they just got in the way because they were nothing. And little things like that. But now, especially the obscuring one, is very, very good positive.
Yeah, it really is, and it adds again back to the whole like small mechanic of changing the dice rolls for rerolls. Is that actually it adds huge amount of flavour into the game again, because no longer is it just I'm on the terrain or I'm off the terrain or I'm just touching the terrain. There's actually real detail that goes into your battlefield now. So things are like, for example, we go like one of these. There's different types of terrain you can add to this. It's breachable, it's scalable. You can have light cover on the top and things like that.
You can decide.
You can decide
what it is.
And now there's rules within the game mechanic that allows you to operate like that. I mean, you can always house rule it into it.
And this specifically, I think, would for most cases be a ruin. Now, if you have a lot of ruins like this on the table, you don't really need the obscuring rule.
No.
Not really. Where before, if you have a table where you have a lot of ruins, but there's tiny ruins, so there's a lot of like line of sight still on the board, you can just put the keyword in where this is going to be obscuring. And suddenly you have this column that goes all the way up where you can't actually target anything, which you can't see if you pass through it. I'm really happy for what they've done with terrain. Again, a bit of a negative is the part where it's not explained that well. It was a bit confusing to actually get a glimpse of how it actually works, and we actually had to talk with a couple of YouTubers as well, and to exactly know how it actually works or how they were doing it, and they asked how we were doing it as well. So that was actually a bit of a negative because you could see a bit of everybody was a bit confused.
I get initial confusion on some aspects, but I love the granular elements that you can create. Like, for example, a barrier, and the Mechanicus terrain has its own stuff now, and all those things I think really add to the game in general.
Yeah, definitely a positive. Cha-ching. Cha-ching. So what else? What else do you think is a positive?
I quite like the. I know some people don't, so appreciate.
This is our personal opinions.
Yeah, of course.
And even like our opinions are different because we'll go into how CP works now, and actually for me is a positive. For him, it's not that much of a positive.
Yeah, it's positive mainly, but with one or two caveats of a negative.
We'll go into that at the end. Yeah, that's like a positive negative. Stream.
But what I quite like, and like I said, that some people might not enjoy this, it's the alternative deployment.
Okay.
I actually really like that. I think it's a great positive because it's brought back for me and I know certain missions did it in 8th and stuff, but it brought back for me that kind of the enjoyment of watching your opponent, popping down this certain aspect, and you go, "Oh, I'm going to go this flank."
It's
like this.
Tacticals from the beginning,
and that tactics from the beginning. But I also enjoy that kind of that element of the game. Part of the game for me is fun. Like,
there's a bit of a negative for me there. It slows down the whole concept of deploying again, and it's for the best. Don't get me wrong; it's for the best because before it was like very, very difficult. Now you're countering how the deployment works, and with again going back onto terrain, with how terrain works now, it's much better for the game.
Also, the deep strike and reserve stuff at the start. changes up again, because I think, and I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying this, is that beforehand, if I went to the table and I had a lot of deep strike, you'd say, this is in reserve, and this is in deep strike, and this is in deep strike, and then your opponent just putting models down, and you would do that. But now it's kind of like,
this is what's deploying. This is what's in deep strike and tactical reserve, which is another good positive. So if your army didn't really have a lot of like board control and movement, now everybody has tactical reserves, where by paying CP, which again everybody has, you can actually now make units appear from board edges and stuff, which changes the dynamic of the game a lot. I like to use it whenever I can, and the times I have used it, they've worked really, really well.
Yeah, it has actually. Yeah, because that fresh unit coming on that side of the board and putting pressure on your opponent, that they like. We've done it before. I've done it to you. And you were like, oh, I completely forgot about that coming from that flank. And then next thing you know, so it's another thing to think about tactically, like the deployment, like everything else. It adds more flavor and character to the game itself, which is amazing.
Yeah. Another positive for me. Shall we move on to more positives?
Yeah, more positive. Always positive.
I really like the missions in this edition. One of the main positives about the missions is how everything is written in one. So you don't have to roll now for separate deployments. It's like, this is the mission, this are the secondaries, this is the deployments. No rolling for different deployments, maps, and slowing the game down. It's like, I want to play, what's the Battle Lines, right? Battle Lines. Battle Lines has its own secondary. The primary are mostly all the same. And then it's Hammer and Anvil. You don't have to roll for that. So I really like how everything's preset. Objectives are preset as well. Just makes the game quicker. And I'm really, really enjoying that.
It also allows, and this I guess is more like tournament play, is that if you've got the tournament pack, wherever tournament you guys are playing, and you know the missions ahead of time, you can practice those missions. You know the deployment's going to be one of the worst things was that when you get to a table and you know your opponent's got X, Y, and Z, and you think, okay, I'm going to counter this, and then you get the worst deployment possible for you.
You're playing guard and you haven't suddenly playing hammer and
it's just like, oh no, why? But that randomness is now taken out of it, and I think and that again, that little bit of randomness they have taken out, it just adds more to the game.
It does,
because I know where I'm going to deploy. I know kind of basic principles of how I'm going to operate. If it's hammer and anvil, if it's Dawn of War. So I agree. That's definitely the missions, and I guess secondaries for me. I really like them.
I really like them, but there's a negative, which I won't talk about it now. We'll talk about it in the negative section. But there's a negative for me, which we'll go into. It really spices up the game. Secondaries is really cool, especially if you're a fan of ITC, which we were a fan of. It brings back. It's basically ITC. The rules were written by Frontline Gaming, so I think. It's basically that.
But the thing, for me, for secondaries, is that it adds more to different armies that were perhaps just quite static. And it allows for more adaptability for an army that perhaps, for example, like before, if it was just straight to the primaries, then I know you're going to bully me off it with your Crimson Fists and shoot me off there. But now I can find points elsewhere by maybe playing to your weaknesses or playing to the strengths of my army.
For sure, it's no longer about just blowing up your enemy off the table. Objectives and how they score is so important in the game. It's actually more important now than blowing up your enemy from the table. Like you can be shot at and units being destroyed. But if you're scoring, you're basically winning the game. And it's happened a lot where I'm like, oh, I've killed all this in turn one, but I'm forgetting about the objectives, which I have been forgetting a lot. Suddenly it's like, he's hardly got anything on the table, but he's winning 56-20. It's like I've suddenly lost the game.
And another one is that it's not only your secondaries got to consider, but your opponent's secondaries. And then how to counter or deny them. So, for example, if you know that your opponent has raised banners, then it's even more important to get to those primary areas in order to shut them down. To try and deny your opponent those points. Or what's the one I quite like is the While We Stand, We Fight for Death Guard. Because they're really resilient. Is that then you can target those. To make sure that you put them down to stop your opponent getting points.
Or if your opponent has like attrition, which is kill more than you. And suddenly you have a Leviathan and you want to throw it into a unit which maybe you don't kill, but there's a couple of like cultists and if you kill those cultists, you're actually stopping him from getting attrition because you're killing more. Suddenly, you're using a storm cannon to kill two cultists just because you're stopping him from getting 4 points in attrition or 5 points in the tournament book.
I'm hoping, and I don't know, but I'm hoping that we get more secondaries
in the codex,
codexes or in updates.
I hope it spices it up.
This
is what I mean by the negative, but we'll talk about that.
But yeah, I've got some negatives as well for secondary, so we can go into that in a bit.
Another positive is how characters work now. I'm loving how characters work now. Like before, characters were so difficult to actually get to with screening, with not being the closest, especially characters that were buffing an army too much. Or you needed snipers, which a lot of armies didn't have snipers, or don't have access to things like snipers.
Chaos,
for example. So now having the whole where if you actually kill what's surrounding the character, you can now kill it, is a massive positive. I think it's one of the best positives in my behalf.
It's also thematically, I think, a lot nicer because there were so many occasions where it was like there's 2 cultists in front of him and a demon prince, and you're like, I can't shoot the demon prince. Or you're like, why wouldn't they be able to?
Yeah, exactly. Well, his warlord was out in the open, just in no man's land, and you just couldn't target him. It was like, why can't my Devastator squad, who are up here in a ruin, target a guy that's nowhere, in the middle of nowhere? So I like it, like fluff-wise, like he says.
Malik loved it, but
now he doesn't like it.
Now he doesn't like it so much.
And it makes you think a lot more, where before you just like, oh, I've got a couple of rows of guys in front of him, so he won't be able to target. He's not got any snipers either, so I'm fine. Where now you actually have to think what's beside him, and tactically for the guy that's shooting the arm, it's like, oh, this turn I'll remove the 2 marine squads that are in front of him.
Yes.
Next turn I'll shoot my las cannons first. I'll remove the dreadbolts that's beside him. Suddenly that warlord is by himself now.
Yes.
So
one thing for me, when 9th first dropped, I only to the team, I went on a bit of a whinge about morale because it's always been a sticking point for me. So to caveat, some context here is that when 8th started, I was like, right, word bearers. I love the lore, I love the fluff. I'm doing word bearers. I made Benji give me some of the initial, I think some of the Dark Imperium stuff. Hi, Benji. And that's why I went off. And I thought, right, this is gonna be me. And then I met Pardo. I met the gang in Gibraltar when I moved here. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. I never used to play tournament stuff before that. It was only just casual games. And I thought, word bearers. I'm gonna take them to the top. And I soon realised that they are bottom of the barrel, and their Legion trait is reroll morale. Right? What Marines got for free.
Yeah.
And then they took it off my cultists, because I had a big cultist army. They took it off cultists, so basically none of my army can use it. But anyway, the point was, I always thought it was, 1, it was rubbish, and 2, it didn't actually work, because half the time I would roll and then reroll and get a higher amount. It was the only Legion trait that could cause more damage than good. I think in the entire game, I couldn't think of anything else when I tried to look. But anyway, I digress. The point being is that it was a real issue for me, and I really wanted something like Fearless or something that added to the flavor of what word bearers really are. And then when I found the rules for 9th coming out, I was like, oh, that sounds worse. I'm gonna have to roll 20 dice, but
it's much better.
It's amazing. It's really, really good, because it not only does it mean that your cultist squad can last it out, and you'll have a guy or 2 guys running around pulling off that last minute kind of heroics.
Yeah.
I think it adds to the game. Whereas initially when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, every time I'm going to take a morale test, I'm going to have to roll 20 dice each time, and they're all going to go. It doesn't work like that. It
works really well. When we actually read it the first time, it's like, oh, this is worse. This is worse. More things are going to die now. Yeah. But the attrition test is like nothing. It's like a couple of 1s here and there if you're lucky, or a couple more. Where before it was like, if you've killed 15 cultists, that's another 15 gone.
The unit was gone.
Unless you spend 2 CP, which really, it was like, do I want to spend 2 CP to get some cultists alive?
And things like now, Tire Traitors, every time before, I used to spend 2 CP to keep them alive, because you shot them. If there was 3 or 4 of them left, I would then spend 2 CP with Tire Traitors, just 4 CP down just for a unit of cultists to do some work. But now, don't have to do that. I've got 2 CP straight away, saved in the bank. And also that's another good point, is you can only use that once per game as well,
which is another good,
really good point. There's so many good points.
There's so many. we won't go through all of them. No, we're going to miss a lot of them.
Yeah,
but we're just like the things that come pop
into your head, exactly. Head quickly. But morale for me was a big change. What I thought was going to be negative, but actually was super positive.
Yeah,
and I really liked that.
Yeah. Next up, I think we should talk about the minimum board size. which they've placed in the 9th edition. So something that a lot of people will probably think it's not agree with us. But
don't downvote straight away. Okay,
don't downvote because you're talking. And again, it's our personal opinion, and it'll be great to hear your opinion as well. But we actually really enjoy the minimum board size.
Yes.
We actually want to get the minimum board size on all our tables outside as well. Obviously with the boards, so if people don't want to use it, they can take it off. But we've been using it since the beginning of 9th, and we give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Like, we understand where it's come from. At the beginning, it was like, that's weird. Why would they do that? Is it all because they want to sell more mats, or Games Workshop are going
conspiracy theory?
But then it's like, when you start playing it and you play it a lot, you see the benefits of it. You see how armies that used to camp in the back are struggling a bit more now, which is a good thing. Games are faster. There's no places to hide anymore.
No.
So combat armies, which I don't think still are as good as what they were talking about in 9th edition. Combat armies are going to be good now. I don't think they're good now. I think shooty armies are still much better.
Yeah.
But at least you can apply pressure much more. And I think that's, again, a big positive.
It is a big positive. Actually, funny enough, when the rules for 9th weren't fully out, but we were playing around testing with the board size, I was daisy chaining cultists everywhere.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we were talking, thinking, oh, well, if this is the case, then you're going to be able to screen things out easily. Well,
I actually forgot about that.
Well, actually, with the unit coherency stuff, it actually keeps it quite boxed in. There's still a little bit of things like Genestealer Cult having a little bit more trouble with trying to find those sweet spots to try and get in, and especially with their specific rule sets of Cult Ambush and stuff, and other armies as well that kind of rely on that. I think they're going to find little elements of struggling, but generally, what I love about the smaller board is that it actually pushes the armies together. It forces you to play.
Games are faster.
And games are faster.
It's a fact. Games are faster.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's a big positive for me.
Another big positive for me too. Yeah, I don't caveat. I still like the big board.
Yeah,
and occasionally we will do the big board.
We're outside in the club when we're having games nights on Wednesdays and Fridays. We're still using the game boards.
Well, I guess for me, when I started playing with the smaller board, after a little while, I didn't even realize that it's smaller.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. I wasn't going, oh, you just play and carry on the game, and you realize, oh, actually,
no difference at all.
Yeah, it's
and like there's a lot of people that were negative about, like, I don't want to cut the mats and I don't want to do this and do that, which is it's fine. But just like, you've seen outside probably in one of our there's another video which is behind the scenes where we go through the club. You can actually see some of the club members have actually put just masking tape, just mask tape. It's like a 30-second job. Mask tape, masking nothing. You've got a bit of extra space on either side for dead models or tape measures or dice, and it just works really well. So if you haven't play tested already, take some masking tape out and just try it, because it's actually really good for the game.
And you don't, like I said, don't have to cut. You don't have to do a Mikey. You don't have to cut.
No, Mikey, don't do that.
Don't cut them.
That hurt me. So yeah, it's good. Any more positives?
There's probably a lot more positives.
Yeah. Those are the ones that come to mind.
Exactly, the ones that pop out for the core rule set. That's the ones that
I've got one.
Oh,
I've got one.
Okay, go on then.
Which is a good one to finish with positives. Because you were actually not very keen on it. So command points. How command points works now. So if your army is Battleforged and all that, you start with 12 command points. And everybody starts with 12 command points, which is really good. Where before, armies like Guard and the likes of it would do a brigade very, very easily.
To caveat though that you start with 12 if you have a certain size force, otherwise it goes up.
Yeah, sorry. So the 1001 to 2001, I think it is. So is 12 command points or something like that. That's what most people use and events use. You start with a certain amount of command points. And the good thing is that everybody starts with the same command points, which is good. Yes. Because when you were playing things like Guards, which I was going into, they used to do a brigade for very, very easy and very, very cheap. And they used to start with an endless amount of command points, where I was playing Custodes, and it was very difficult for me to do a battalion. And I started with 4 command points. And I always thought it was very uneven, and at the same time spoiled the game a bit, because I think command points and stratagems bring so much flavor to the game itself that it actually spoiled it a bit, where now it's like you're starting with 12. You're starting with 12. If we both have our warlords in certain detachments, we are starting with 12. If not, you start paying for extra detachments, which is a good thing again. And I think it just makes the game much more balanced. And armies which needed this now have it.
I agree. Wholeheartedly, I agree that I love the idea of having a set number of command points that you then, it's like allocated, that you then spend to what, if you want to put loads of relics and pre-game stratagems in your army,
it's your choice.
Great, it's your choice, rather than being having to chase command points in order to try and do that, and then putting in stuff that you might not want in the army to get to that level. I love that. And I also love that you get a CP back every game.
Oh, that's wonders. Like, you're always going to have a free reroll. Or there's a lot of codexes which there's always that stratagem which costs 1 CP and is really good.
Yes.
You're always going to have that stratagem to use, like I don't know, like the Necron one where destroyers reroll everything to 8 and 2, and I think that's 1 CP. Having that CP every turn now for free is like so good.
So that goes back to when I was saying about the CP reroll. And how Gaze of Fate, it's those little things now, that those little extras, the warlord traits that maybe they, and these guys, I mean, 90 has probably been in works for a while now. They're probably thinking that ahead.
For sure.
And we're all going, well, is that
they actually,
a command point?
Didn't they actually say that, like, Psychic Awakening was written in mind for 9th edition? Yes. And there's a lot of, like, stratagems and warlord traits where we were both like, what? That's quite bad. Yeah. And now it's like, no, it's actually good now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can actually reroll this, which you can't actually normally reroll.
Yeah. There's a Despoilers one for Word Bearers. It was against terrain, and I thought, why would I do that? And then I thought, that's actually quite handy in comparison. But
that's good.
Yeah, but I won't go into the negatives of that part now. But generally, I agree. That allocated to CP. How then you can build your army with that adds another layer on top of kind of the tactics before the game and during the game, what you want to do. And also, like you said, a huge boost. For me personally, my Chaos Knights have more CP now than they used to. My Word Bearers have more. I used to sit around 8 or 9 CP. Now I'm on 12 and getting one back every turn.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about so much attrition-wise how I'm going to keep it going now.
Yeah.
And I just take a battalion and it just, job done. Everything I need in it is perfect. So really good job on that one.
And I think that's about it.
That's about it.
That come to mind straight away.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's loads of positives. That it's an amazing addition. And if you're contemplating starting Warhammer for the first time, or contemplating in coming back from 6th edition, now is the time, because everything's getting updated quickly. The rules are really nice. They're streamlined. Everything's been ruled, and all the grey areas that we had before have more or less been covered now. On to negatives?
On to negatives.
And we're back. And now on to the negatives. Again, personal opinions, and there's probably some negatives that we'll probably miss, which we'll love to actually hear about. So comment below if we actually miss any, or if you think we're actually talking nonsense.
Yeah, well, we often talk.
we talk a lot of nonsense.
But yeah, I'd love to hear what people think about their experiences of 9th and what they think is good and bad.
I think I'll enjoy more reading what you guys think are negatives than the positives, actually, because they interest me more.
I
think negatives interest me more, and there's a bit more of a chat going on. Like, why negative, and what we can do to actually make it a positive.
Yes, agreed.
That's the good thing.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start off with a big. It's not really a negative, but it's something that is still, I think, a big problem, which is going first. First turn and going first.
It's too big.
It's too big. Yeah. Like it's still huge. It's still huge. And the problem is, I think it's been fixed a bit with the whole deployment wise, where you deploy one and I deploy, so there's always a counter deployment. But at the moment, if you don't want to die first turn, it's basically you have to deploy defensive, and I think it's something that you're going to see a lot in 9th. Both armies have to deploy defensively.
Like they're going second.
And that's a big thing for those of you who have just started. I think it's something you have to get into your head. If you deploy aggressively at your own will, that's fine, because maybe your list plays like that.
Yeah.
But if you're playing against a list like Tau or something like that, which really hit hard turn 1, you need to deploy defensively. And if you don't, turn 1 really changes up a lot.
A good reference is the report we've recently just done. It's probably in the video. It's probably there.
It's
video
probably,
wise. It's probably there. You can see it.
Watch next.
Watch next. That one. So spoiler alert on that one. 1, 2. Someone said that I was too quick on the spoilers.
You were quick. You were quick. Give him a couple of more seconds. So
okay, spoiler. 3, 2, 1. Right. In the Death Guard Crimson Fist game, we talked about the how powerful Marines are in general, but we're not going to go there. What I'm going to go with is that the firepower output of Crimson Fists for the footprint they put onto the board, it was so much less than, for example, my Death Guard army or Horde armies, etc. So I feel like another aspect of going first is that, for example, like you're saying, you deploy defensively. You managed to hide a Leviathan and 2 Contemptors with ease.
Yeah.
I couldn't hide my Playburst Crawlers or my Mythic Fly. I couldn't hide. Not that I want to hide the entire thing, but as you play defensively,
you could hide some things, but you couldn't hide the whole footprint
because my footprint is so much bigger. Yeah. And for Horde armies that have that kind of that burden, like Tyranids, for example, big monsters, loads of big swarms.
Yeah.
That deployed defensively for them is going to be a lot more difficult.
Yes.
For you and your elite Marines, it was like pop out and then bam, hit you with a sledgehammer.
It's not even that. It's like there's certain armies which there's no point in deploying defensively. Like a Kraken army, Gene Stealer Kraken army. Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't want to be Orcs. You don't want to be deployed in the back end and making sure he's out of his full 48-inch range blast missiles, because it means that you're going to take 2 turns now to get to him, where you want to get to him in 1 turn on turn 1.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly. It penalizes a certain army type, certain aspects, and it's not a bad or a good thing in that sense. But for me, it's just that if you have a game mechanic which is focused on turn by turn, who goes first and who goes second, does the entire thing, rather than the kind of like activation game mechanics that people do, you're going to have a little bit of balance. And we don't mind that personally. I don't mind if my opponent's going to get a little bit extra or might use a unit here or there. But when you have some armies that just hit like a sledgehammer, and in that game in particular, like the Bull, the Leviathan, just rinsed through my army.
It's like a hammer.
It's like a hammer. And then it's really hard to actually come back from that. And the one thing I was hoping for with 9th was that it did away with the kind of it's over before you really get to try anything.
Yeah.
And it is better. I would say it's a lot better.
It's a lot better.
Because in 8th, it was literally you put your models on the table and you just spend your time taking them off.
Yeah, there was games where you knew if you weren't going first, you were going to lose a game.
Yeah.
Where now it's still a big factor.
Yes.
But you can play the game a bit more, especially how points are now a factor. For me, the biggest problem is that, like I mentioned in one of the positives, it's all about scoring points. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are good at building lists, which many competitive people are, and we actually are going to do a video about building lists for 9th edition, because building lists in 9th edition is very, very different to how you built a list in 8th edition.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you're going first and you've got a decent list where things move on to objectives fast, and you still have the punch to remove a lot of the enemy's units, you're going second is very, very bad for you, because you have this really good army moving on to objectives. You've got the army onto 3 objectives, for example, plus it's hitting you like a hammer.
Yeah.
Your next turn, you can't move on to those objectives. No. You haven't got enough units to actually kill those units on those objectives, and suddenly you're not scoring points anymore.
Yeah.
Half your army is dead, whilst the person that's gone first, his army is still alive. He's scoring 15 points next turn for his primary. He's scoring loads of secondaries, and that's a factor. Now, the problem here is what you do to actually fix this.
Yeah.
And it's very, 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 very difficult. I can't actually think of anything. Like, maybe give them like a +1, like prepared positions automatically if you're going second, but maybe then that gets a bit too much. So it's very difficult, and we would love to hear you guys actually say if you've got any ideas of how that works. But it's not really negative, but it's something that we've seen lately.
Exactly, we've seen it.
We've already seen it, and
we've experienced it. Like I've gone first in some games and been absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
But there is a general principle. If you go first, you've got that significant advantage.
Yes, for sure.
Especially if you've got a mean list, of course.
For sure, especially in tournament play. If you're playing like 2 good tournament plays, that's why I like building lists. There's certain ways where you can build lists in mind to go second. So if you're going second, you don't mind. And if you actually win the roll-off, you can choose to go second anyway, which is really tactical as well. Let's move on to something else now.
Okay, another thing for me, I was going to talk about artillery.
Okay, yeah, that's a big factor.
Yeah.
So this was something I was talking about to the team and to many of you guys in the community, in the SN community. Artillery are still very strong. I was really hoping, and I was actually quite convinced that it would happen, that artillery, if you didn't have line of sight onto something, you would automatically receive a -1 to hit, which is something I think isn't game-breaking and isn't like a really massive negative on artillery pieces, but something that is actually needed, because you're still seeing a lot of marine lists with artillery, coupling in now how the terrain works, where you're obscuring and it's really nice. If the list you're playing against has a lot of artillery, especially marine lists where they're re-rolling everything and they've got really nice stratagems with artillery and they're shooting twice and all that, it doesn't matter what terrain you have on the table, how much obscuring terrain you have on the table, you're still getting hits. So that's a bit of a negative, and I hope they implement that maybe in an errata or an FAQ, where artillery, if they don't have line of sight, they should get a -1.
But even if you get, this is the thing, I guess we're talking about Marines as a primary here, but obviously there's Basilics and there's other things, but with them is that even if with a -1, because you have so much rerolls, it doesn't matter. Like I go, right, Miasma Pestilence, -1 to hit, or Alpha Legion, -1 to hit. You're like, okay, I reroll everything anyway.
Yeah.
Right, I lost 1 shot. You're like,
exactly.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. But yeah, that kind of, especially now with, you have to penalize yourself in the sense of you have to make sure your characters are well screened and going to position. That means you're taking up resources in your army for units that have to look after them or babysit them, go along with them. Otherwise, it's a tax. Exactly. It's a tax. Otherwise, artillery is going to get you. And so I agree. There needs to be like a Basilisk before, or any kind of, you should have a template and you used to roll it. And I mean, yeah, that was pretty archaic back then, but I mean, artillery doesn't hit all the time. I mean, it's the whole point. You can't see, but you're hitting, I guess, coordinates, right?
Yeah, maybe bring that back just for artillery that hasn't got line of sight. But I think a -1 will just fix it. And I think it was something that a lot of people thought it was coming.
Maybe. I think it'll penalize some armies, but it won't penalize the ones that are making the full use of it. Like Guard, like I said, the rerolls. -1 to you doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But a -1 to a Guard army is huge.
Yeah, Guards would be hitting on 5s now.
Yeah.
Suddenly. So it's good. So that's one of the negatives. Another one for me is going back to secondaries. They're amazing, but they're a bit stale now. So I've played probably 50 games by now, seriously, like no joke. And it's become a bit monotonous, where things like engage for all fronts is like automatically there. If you're playing a lot of tank units against a lot of tank units, you suddenly bring it down.
Yeah.
And I think there's not enough secondaries at the moment in these books for it to bring a bit of life back onto the secondaries. I'm really hoping for specific secondaries in the codexes, which live it up a bit, like the list up a bit.
If they do that, it'd be like, imagine specific ones like Word Bearers.
Yeah.
You have to do something specific mission-wise, like some sort of sacrifice or summoning.
Yeah.
That you get victory points on top of that. I think that'd be amazing, and it's an easy mechanic they could add into the game that creates a lot of fluff and flavor.
Yeah,
for each faction.
Flavor is the word.
For me, secondaries is that it's not so much the stale thing at the moment. It's more that some secondaries are really strangely pointed, and other ones are like give you an example. My favorite one is Raise the Banners High. I think it's such a cool idea.
Very cool.
You could model little banners that go on top of the objectives, just claim what's yours. I think there's loads of modeling and like hobby stuff you can add to it. But to actually get Raise the Banners, you've got to put a lot of effort in to get that point.
Yeah.
Which is really, really easy for them to take down. So I've got a unit, for example, let's say a unit of cultists. I can't do anything with them. I can't advance them. So often I can't really get to the objective. So they're almost there. But let's say they do and they advance, they can't do anything. But if they got there anyway, they raise the banner. They can't shoot, they can't do combat, they can't do anything. They just sit there.
Yeah.
And okay, that's a benefit for which I guess you're going to go into actions in a moment to talk about those. But they do that, they survive, they get the banner up, 1 point. And then at the end of the game, 1 point. And every turn I get another 1 point.
Yeah.
The chances are they're not going to be around and you're going to swoop in and get rid of that. And I think that's a lot of effort and a lot of resources to get what is just 1 point.
It's very cool if you're playing at home against a mate or a friend, but if you're playing that in a tournament, it's like difficult to keep track of.
Yeah.
And it's not scoring the points you want. So especially at tournament play or competitive play, it's always going to be the same secondaries. It's always going to be things like engage all fronts, which is very easily. There's probably always going to be either bring it down or what's the one that kill 10 points for every model you kill?
Thin their ranks.
Thin their ranks if you're playing hordes. I think it's always going to be that, and it gets monotonous after a while. So I'm really hoping we will see extra secondaries either added in somewhere in a book or just updated onto a website.
There's one as well. It's like there's Assassinate and you get 3 points per character, I think. But then there's Slay the Warlord, which is just 4 points.
Just 4 points. Like why? Just give them a 10 points. It's not max. It's not max of 15, but like killing the Warlord.
Killing the Warlord.
I think it's 5 points, and you get 3 points extra if you've actually killed. Oh no, that's first strike. 5 points, and then an extra 3 points if you kill more than just that's like you wouldn't go for that. Why would you just want 5 points when you can score 15 points in another one, which is 10 points more?
There is an argument to say that you might go for the easy points if you know your opponent for X, Y, Z reasons. You're not going to get it, so you're going to go right. I'll get the 4 points. I'll go for first strike, or I'll go for Assassinate because he's got a lot of characters. But things like killing the Warlord of the army.
I think it's 6 points, right? Slay the Warlord.
You just don't seem to. I just don't think that's
up it to 10. Where it's like it's still difficult to kill a Slay the Warlord, and you're not still scoring 15 points. You're scoring 10, which is still a decent amount of points.
Yeah. And
it probably has been difficult to actually achieve as well.
And I think if you up the points, more people will take it. Up the victory points, more people will take it. And then things like what's it called? Faceless Commander, or I Am Alfarius, for example, for Alpha Legion. Whereas that if your Warlord dies, another one becomes your Warlord.
That's very cool.
In 8th, that was very cool because Slay the Warlord was a thing. In 9th, I feel that people won't take Slay the Warlord because what's the point?
Most of the time you're killing Warlords, you're not gaining any points.
So that relic is it's a very cool relic that's not really going to be used in 9th
anymore. Yeah.
Which things like that, and I think all it takes is just you get 15 victory points if your Warlord survives. Great, I'm going to take I am Alfarius, and then your opponent's going to go, well, I'm going to kill him to try and deny you those points.
Exactly.
That alone will change it up and add that back into the game.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
definitely. Yeah. And I think probably the last negative is I think it's the last negative.
I want to talk about
detachments. That's what I'm going to go into detachments. So detachments is a really cool thing. But one of the negatives, I think, like things like the Outrider, the Spearhead, and the
Supreme Command detachment.
No, that one's gone. But I'm just saying that maybe it's a bit too expensive. It's actually 3 points to actually field one of those now. Attacks of 3 CP.
I don't even look at them when I go into.
You just go straight into battalion. So, and I think it's just because of that, where battalion, if your Warlord was there, you gain 3 CP back. Maybe just simply put, like, if you want to use a Vanguard and your Warlord's in there, you get 1 CP back. So instead of it taxing you 3 command points, it's now suddenly 2. And even then, I think it's a bit too expensive. I think there should have been two command points for taking one of them, because it makes you actually bring a fluffy list and actually bring like an Outrider detachment where you've got a lot of bikes and stuff. Where now it's like I have to spend 3 CP to actually bring an Outrider. Where if you actually add something like but if your Warlord is there, like you actually get 1 back as well.
Yeah. But there's that.
But then there's the positives as well.
There's positive. Don't get me wrong. There's positive. Like Supreme Command detachment. I like that it's changed. I mean, the boys at Table of Titans, Brian and Liam. I don't know if you're watching. They actually mentioned before about the idea of Supreme Command. There's more to the Supreme Command detachment than we actually know.
Yeah.
About giving CP back if your Warlord goes into it.
Yeah.
So I think there's more coming that will really pad it out. I think.
Yeah.
But
Supreme. It's good that things like
for me, the Supreme Command is now in the right place. It's that your Warlord, your big guy, he's meant to go into that. Otherwise, why taking 3 characters? Exactly. Like spamming 3
demon princes,
things like that. I love that. I love the fact that I like the Air Wing's gone.
Air Wing's gone, because
that was a nightmare.
People were just spamming it.
Yeah.
Like they were just making the most of it and going step too much.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
But I do. On the flip side, I do. Like, we've got 3 Doom Scythes.
Yeah. And it's still easy. You just put 1 in the patrol detachment and then bring another detachment. and just bring 2 in there. So it's quite easy, but there's a tax to it. Which is good. Before people were just spamming it with no tax whatsoever.
Yeah, they were, exactly. So I love that they've tightened up that part, and I love the fact that a battalion now and a brigade. Well, saying that a brigade, people aren't really looking at brigades as much because a battalion just fits what you need.
Yeah.
There's, to go back to my bugbear with the CP, the 12 you get at the start, is that it's benefited a lot of good armies. Like Custodians benefited from hugely, and I'm actually a fan of that because I think that they had a lot of cool stuff in their rulebook that they couldn't really utilize because they didn't have any CP.
Like Custodians.
And generally, most people have been buffed.
Yeah.
But there are 1 or 2 armies that perhaps have been hit quite hard.
Like
Genestealer Cult.
Okay.
More so, and this is almost like a personal bugbear because much like when I started in 8th, I was like, oh, Word Bearers, I like them. They're going to be good. And then I soon realized they're not competitive at all. And I still had fun with them and took them to tournaments. Pure Word Bearers I'm talking about, guys. But I always felt like the underdog. And if I won, it was like, I actually won with Word Bearers
which is much cooler.
Yeah. So in 9th, I was talking to the guys on the lead up to 9th. We were like, oh, we knew it was kind of coming. Well, actually, we didn't know it was coming this quick.
No.
But we were talking about it. It was like, right, when 9th comes, I'm going to try a more competitive type army. And I'm not the kind of guy that goes like Imperium Soup or what's the best math hammer I can make. I still love my lore, I love my fluff, but I also like to play with something with a little bit more teeth.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to take Genestealer Cults because they're really fun. I love the lore.
And they're competitive.
Or were competitive. And then 9th hit, and they have been hit with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my curse, but for me, and when they come out and said, like, you're no longer getting taxed anymore on your armies in order to get the CP you need. Well, Genestealer Cult are one of the ones that got hit with that really, really hard because before you could fill out 3 battalions with ease. And I think it's one of those armies that has such power behind their stratagems and how they utilize them.
Relics and warlord traits.
And characters. And now your characters, you can all fit in a battalion everything you need.
Yeah.
So you're being taxed already to take the army that makes Genestealer Cult viable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, right now, a lot of people are struggling with them. Now, this is what I've watched a lot, read a lot, spoke to a lot of Genestealer Cult players, and because I wanted to read up to get ready for my my Genestealer Cult, and I just feel for those guys that are saying that, right, well, I used to start with 16 CP plus, and now I'm starting with like 8 before the game starts.
Half the amount.
Yeah, exactly, literally half, and you get one back, yes, but it's really, really hit them hard. And I'd like to know actually what other factions that you guys play. Like, for example, is it Orcs, or is there others that also been affected by that, or is it just Genestealer Cults? Because
I think they've got the worst hits.
Because I could be in a bit of a bubble here because I'm reading a lot about it. But
there might be others.
There might be others, and I think that flip side that needs at least to be addressed by GW.
Yeah.
Before
I think maybe it's all comes down to codexes. I think codexes will maybe spice it up, flavor it up. Well, and go into those grey areas where the rule book has given them.
That Drukhari have that patrol one, right, where they can take patrols for free.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Fix it. That'd be super easy.
Yeah. So that's more or less the negatives. Obviously, we've gone into a bit of depth for negatives, but don't be negative about it. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And we're having loads of fun, and we think it's great. A couple of positives that we missed, which is very, very, very important, is quickly go through them. Is I really like that vehicles don't suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy.
It's probably my favorite. Actually,
it's really good. It makes sense. Vehicles were specifically made for things like tanks were made so they can move and fire without any dragging along big heavy weapons. So that's a really good positive which we left out, which we probably have a couple of comments already, and now we are deleting them because we're going through them. And then the other one is like falling back and still being able to shoot with fly, which was broken. Was the worst thing there was. Broken. Like when you used to play against Tau and charge them in with Genestealers and get overwatched on 5s and everything overwatched, and you had 4 Genestealers left and made it into combat, and suddenly they fell back and shot at you again. That was horrendous. It's made the game very, very, very cool and very, very tactical again, which is another positive, which I think is very good, and we missed out.
Well, I think we didn't. Did we talk about actions?
I don't think we you said we were going to go into it, but we didn't. So
we should
let's quickly touch that. So this for me is a negative. Like, I love how actions, how they've actually thought of these actions, but the main negative is that there's too much of a negative when you're performing an action. Like you can't shoot, you can't charge, you can't do this, you can't perform psychic powers, you can't do some of them. And I think there's too much of a negative for that action, especially if you're paying a lot. If you have like an elite army where you're paying a lot of points, like again going back to like things like Adeptus Custodes or I don't know, like Space Marines, which everything is now cost efficient.
Yes.
You don't want a unit that's cost you 300 points doing an action, not being able to shoot with their good weapons. No. So I think actions need to be thought about.
You end up just not taking them, right?
No, yeah.
So
exactly.
it's just redundant in the book.
Exactly.
And then, like for me, that I do take actions, like I was saying, it's too much effort for me to get that point in order to do it. Yeah. So I don't kind of take them. I take Raise the Banners because I just enjoy it, but in reality, it doesn't really get me anything.
Exactly.
I take the ones that are either survive at the end or I can get from maneuverability, etc., rather than which are just passive. They're not required.
Exactly. And you want things that easy. You don't want to be thinking, oh, this one has to do an action. This is doing that. You want it to be streamlined. You want it to be easy. So yeah, I think we've gone through most of the stuff. We'll probably have a chat in a couple of weeks' time and with more positive and negative because the game is actually quite new at the moment as well. But it's been a good chat. I've liked it.
I wanted to get a cup of tea or something.
I liked it. Yeah, next time we need tea.
I came for a battle report.
Yeah, and we've started.
And he said we're not playing a battle.
Anyway, we've enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, please comment below. Let us know what you think. Mr. DC has put his helmet on. That means that we're out. So we'll catch you back in the next one. Cheerio.